Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Leonard. I'm Chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me this evening, board members Michael Brown and Nick Gray. We're starting a little early tonight in order to hear from Mrs. Marion McGettrick, who has a motion to extend the variance at 28 Blue Hill Avenue in Milton, Massachusetts. So I think without further ado, Mrs. McGettrick, are you all set to rock and roll?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, great. We're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. And I very much appreciate your scheduling this because there was a time limit on this request. There is an outstanding variance, the time for the variance at 28 Blue Hill Ave, which is for the development of a lot with a two-family house, will expire on April 6th. And the lot has not sold yet. There is a buyer at the present time. And there is a clause in the purchase and sale agreement that we must apply for this extension because between now and April 6th is probably not enough time to get a building permit. It's taken quite a while to get through that process, as it usually does. It's taking even a little longer now. So we're back here before the board to ask if you will grant an administrative extension of 6 months for this variance, which would then allow enough time for a new buyer to go through the building permit process and see if he can get a building permit for this lot. I don't know, I can't remember now who was on the original hearing, maybe Nick Gray was, but in any case, this is kind of an unusual case. There are two lots, one has a house on it. The one next door is a buildable lot. It's one of these pre-existing non-conforming lots with a house on the lot next door. Both lots have been owned in common since before 1938. But when we came before the Board of Appeals, we were requesting permission to build a two-family rather than a single-family house on this lot. And this was primarily because of the nature of the housing in the area. There are many two families, also quite a number of single family homes. It's very close to public transportation, Mattapan Square. And it seemed inappropriate. There's a multi-family residence, almost not directly abutting, but quite close to this property. So in the end, after quite a few hearings, the board decided to grant the variance. Since then, in the past year, of course, we've had COVID-19. There's one purchase and sale that did not go through because of problems with timing and COVID. In addition, the owner now owns the property by himself, no longer owns it with his girlfriend. So there've been some changes in the ownership, and he is not going to continue to own this property. He's marketing both the house and this lot. So we're asking if the board be willing to extend for 6 months to try to facilitate perhaps actually carrying out this variance as intended. I think that would probably be the end of permission for relief in this regard, but it would be very helpful if you would consider granting the extra 6 months.
Okay, let me just ask two quick questions. So in any decision that the board may render here, the former companion or girlfriend of Mr.
Plomeritis
will not be mentioned. Is that
She
true?
will not. The applicant is just Evan Plomeritis.
Okay, great. And could you just very briefly describe what legal authority you cite for the board having the power to do this?
Well, it's statutory, and I regret to say that I don't have the letter in front of me. I just came from a planning board meeting. I believe you do. I apologize for that, but it is statutory in the zoning, state zoning statute. Do you see it in front of you?
I do. I was going to let you be the hero.
I know I should be telling you, but I don't know where. For some reason, I don't have it in front of me. It's rushing, so.
I apologize to you. You cite in your letter of January 19, 2021, that the board should check Cornell versus the Board of Appeals of Draycott. The citation is 453 Mass 888. The local site is 893. And that's a 2009 decision of the Supreme Judicial Court. And you also cite the provisions of General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, subsection S. Or it's a 5. It's a 5, subsection 5.
Yeah, thank you.
And I've had the opportunity to read those cases, and I agree with you that they stand for the proposition that you cite them for. Let me do this. Let me see if my colleagues have any questions. Mr. Gray, do you have any questions of Mrs. McGettrick?
No, not at this time. I think it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, Mr. Brown, do you have any questions?
Questions for me? I agree. It's pretty straightforward.
Okay, well, that looks like unanimous. Let me see if there's anybody present this evening who wishes to either speak in favor of your application to extend the variance by 6 months, or who otherwise may have some questions of you, Mrs. McGettrick. Is there any such person present this evening? Okay, the record indicates there's no such person present. Let me ask whether anyone wants to speak in support of this application to extend the time of the April 5th, 2021 variance. I said 2020.
2020.
It's April 6th, 2020.
2020.
Yeah. And there's no one who wants to speak in favor. Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this application for an extension of the variance? Okay, there's no such person present. Mrs. McGettrick, I just have one additional question of you, and I just want to see if my mathematics or my dates are right. If the variance is going to expire on April 6, 2021, then the 6-month extension date, if the board votes to grant it, would be approximately March 1st, 2021. Do you agree with that? 6 months. No, it's 6 months. It's October. I'm looking at my wrong notes. October 4th, 2021. Is that date? Does that meet?
That sounds correct to me. Thank you.
Okay, great. So, Mr. Gray, absent the public wanting to be heard here, do you want to address these issues?
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. I think that the board has granted a variance in the past for this project. Obviously, there's been a lot that's gone on, both in the world and in the applicant's life since this was, we granted the previous, I think it was a revival, not an extension. And in light of those facts and in light of the fact that there's no opposition to it, I'm in favor of supporting a 6-month extension.
Okay, Mr. Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. My sentiments exactly, and with the lack of opposition, I vote in favor of granting the extension.
My view of this is that this is a very technical amendment seeking to promote the best interests of all parties here and to prevent further applications, unnecessary applications, and it's certainly to accomplish justice. And so I intend to support this this application wholeheartedly. So let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of granting this motion to extend the time of the variance until, let's say, October 5, 2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so you've got your extension, Marion, congratulations. I did actually take a run at the proposed order on this matter, knowing that you're in some type of a time frame. Regretfully, I have to tell you that people kept me on the telephone too long and too many times. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Mrs. Sutton, probably tomorrow sometime, send you this proposed decision. I'm going to suggest you treat it as a draft. Be cruel to it if you have to, because I just know that I prepared this very quickly with too many people chirping to me on other issues. And I know this is very important to the applicant, that everything be technically correct, and that the proposed real estate transaction doesn't get either further delayed or confused by a board decision which doesn't touch all the bases. So if you have any comments or questions, you're not bashful, would warrant your assistance. And we'll do our very, very best to get this signed up so that the closing will go forward in a timely manner.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. McGettrick. Look forward to your comments. And thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and the decision. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah, we're going to close this first hearing, and we have a draft decision outstanding. So let's see what Mrs. McGettrick has to say, and then we can hopefully circulate it and get that moving. Our next hearing is at 7:30, and it's now 7:26. So we'll wait approximately 4 minutes and move on to our next hearing.
I was just going to ask, do you have this one?
Can't you scan it? Oh, okay. I'll send it. I do have it. I send it to my wife. Thanks. Okay, I'll send you that. If I forget, hit me on the head. Okay. The price. Okay, I have 7:30. Mr. and Mrs. Price, is that you out there?
Yes, yes.
Great. Now your name is on the screen. That's all good start. We're going to open our first formal hearing of the board on the merits. This is the 7:30 application of Benjamin and Kristen Price. The Prices live at 141 Alvin Avenue in Milton. They filed an application with the board dated November 2nd, 2020, seeking variances from the terms and provisions of Section 6B1 and 6C3 of the zoning bylaw. Their residence was built in 1953 as a single-family home and is presently conforming with the Milton zoning bylaw regarding its use and its dimensions. The property is located in a Residence C zoning district. Here, the applicants are proposing to build a 6-foot by 39-foot farmer's porch at the front of the home and to remove an existing 22-foot by 2-foot 1-inch by 1-story attached garage and to build a 27-foot by 23-foot 2-story addition to the left side of the property, which I indicated was located at 141 Alvin Avenue in Milton. We have a plot plan on file dated 6/29/20, which shows that the farmer's porch would be built at a distance of 15 feet from the front property line when 20 feet are normally required by Section 6B1. And the plan also shows that the 2-story addition would be built at a distance of 16 feet 4 inches from the left side property line when 20 feet are normally required by Section 6C3 of the zoning bylaw. As evidence for the hearing, and I've just read the advertisement into the record, we have the application, which is dated 11/2/2020. We have an addendum that's written to the Board of Appeals by the applicants, which discusses the request for relief and the reason why they believe the relief should be granted. And we have the denial letter by Joseph Prondak, Milton Building Inspector. It's dated September 11th, 2020. We have a plot plan of land by Anderson Surveys, Inc. of High Street in Hanson, Massachusetts. It's dated June 29th, 2020. Shows the subject property and its distances from the front and side lot lines. We have a set of proposed renovation and addition plans. They're by Thomas McGrath Architects. It looks like they're of Milton, Massachusetts, but its print is very, very small. And that is in approximately 10 pages, showing the front view of the property, the side views, a back view, the interior portion of the property and on different floors, and everything you'd want to know about the proposed addition. So these plans have been on file with the board for about 6 weeks at least. Probably much more than that. The applications dated 11/2/2020 were a little delayed in our applications being serviced due to a large number of Chapter 40B applications, which take precedence. So in addition to the documents which I've just read in the record, we did receive a series of letters from abutters and interested persons regarding the application, which I will summarize for the sake of the record. We have a letter dated January 17th, 2001 to the Board of Appeals. It's from Jerry and Margaret Lloyd. They reside at 157 Franklin Street in Milton, and they say that they're neighbors to the right-hand side of the Price property, and they've had a chance to review the plans, and they support the variance request. So we thank Mr. and Mrs. Lloyd for their participation. We have a letter from Philip Murphy of 143 Franklin Street in Milton. And Mr. Phil Murphy writes that 143 Franklin Street, Mr. Murphy's house is a side abutter with a view to the rear of the property, and that he supports the work and the updates that this family is doing to stay in the neighborhood. So we thank Mr. Murphy for his participation. We have a letter from Christine and Michael McAuliffe of 151 Franklin Street in Milton. They write to the board that they abut this property to the rear, and they've reviewed the plans, and they support the variance applications for the farmer's porch and what they call the garage. We have a letter dated January 17th, 2017, strike it, January 17, 2021. It's from Sally O'Connor of 150 Alvin Street in Milton. And she writes that she is Kristen and Ben's neighbor across the street. So you're touching all the bases here, which is important. And they've reviewed the plans and they support the application for variances. We have a letter dated January 17, 2021 from Greg Chandler and Diane Sacco. They reside at 153 Alvin Avenue, and they're Kristen and Ben's neighbors to the left, where they're proposing to rebuild a garage, and they've reviewed the plans and they support the variance applications. We thank the Mr. Chandler and Ms. Sacco. And we have a final letter of support. It's from Hung Tran and Thu Nguyen of 142 Alvin Avenue, Milton. They write in support of the application for variances. They are Chris and Ben's neighbors directly across the street. They've reviewed the plans and they support the variance as requested. So we thank Mr. Tran and Ms. Nguyen for their participation in this proceeding. So we have all of those documents as evidence at the hearing. The hearing will proceed in the usual fashion. We'll hear from the applicants. Then we'll hear from any persons present who may have questions of the applicant. We'll hear from people who wish to speak in support of the application or anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to these applications for variances. The proceedings are being recorded this evening, both on video as well as on tape. So that we'd ask that before anyone speaks, they tell us loudly and clearly the name and address so they can be identified if we have to revert to the tape in order to hear the application. So with that as a rather long wind up to the application, we ask Mr. and Mrs. Price, who's going to present the application to the board.
Hi, my name is Ben Price, and this is my wife, Kristen Price. Thanks to the board for hearing our application here, and we just kind of wanted to chat through a few things. And mentioned we purchased the house back in 2019 with the goal of raising our family here. Love the street, love the town, and we're really looking forward to growing our family here. So as you mentioned, the house was built in the 1950s and could definitely use a little bit of an update. So we're looking to do some renovations there, including adding some curb appeal in the front with the farmer's porch and then rebuilding the garage on the side. The garage right now in its current state has a large crack in it, and half of the back half of the garage is sinking. You can visibly see that. So it's just not structurally sound there. So the two setbacks or the two release or variances that we're seeking are for the front yard setback and the side yard setback. So I'll talk about the front yard setback first. So we're asking for relief from that for the requirement of a front yard setback. The required setback currently, we believe, is 20 feet, and the proposed design, as you mentioned, has a 15-foot setback. The reason for that relief is that the entry door that we have right now on the existing house is unprotected from the weather except for a 1-foot roof overhang. And any addition to on the front of the house of a porch or a roof would require relief, as the front wall is located only a foot back from the current setback line. So the proposed entry porch that the entry porch that we're proposing would make the property a lot more attractive in our opinion, and it shouldn't be out of character for the neighborhood. There's definitely a couple other farmers porches in the neighborhood that really add that character. So that's the first piece of relief. And Mr. Leonard, I'm not familiar with this process, so should I continue
Oh, yeah.
Just with the
Continue on,
second.
make your presentation, then we'll ask you some questions.
Perfect. And then I'll finish the second one, and our architect, Thomas McGrath, is on the phone too. So at that point, I'll ask him if he has anything else to add, if you don't mind.
Great.
But for our second,
Not on the screen.
okay. Yeah, for the second one, our second relief, we are looking for relief from the side yard setback. The existing house is currently set at 20 feet, 20.4 feet from the left side of the lot line. And we have a proposal of coming within 16 feet, 16.4 feet of that setback. The 20-foot setback there is only required because the lot abuts what is called Albert Place. If you actually physically stand on Albert Avenue and look at Albert Place, it's green because it's a paper street that was never built. So it's just trees and grass right now that the town owns a sliver of between ourselves and the Chandlers/Sackos. So the side yard for most houses on our street have a setback of 10 feet, where the proposed design would not need relief. And it's extremely unlikely that Albert Place would ever be built upon because there's nothing behind there. It just backs up to a wooded area that abuts Andrews Park. I believe the original intention of that place was to get access to the back lot, which used to be a separate lot, but is now part of our property. And so with that taken into mind, there would be 75 feet distance from our house over to the Sacco / Chandler house. So that's a significant amount there. So the reason we're requesting relief there is the existing garage, as I mentioned earlier, was built without really a proper foundation, and it needs to get demolished. And then to come back and rebuild that garage, the existing fireplace juts out into the current garage right now. So we have to shift over a little bit to give room for to give the proper room for cars to fit in there for both the chimney as well as stairs to the interior of the house, which do not currently exist. And as you mentioned, we've chatted with all of our neighbors, our butters, and received their support. And again, we appreciate your time and consideration.
Great. Thank you very, very much. Let me see if my fellow board members have any questions. Mr. Brown, do you have any questions of the applicants?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I don't have any questions. I'm looking at the plans as Mr. Price was speaking. Mr. Price, it was a good presentation. I don't have any questions.
Okay, Mr. Gray, do you have any questions of the applicants?
I just wanted to ask, and you recited, Mr. Leonard, very, very nicely, all of the people that wrote letters in support. And I was just looking to see if the abutters at 153, who would be closest to the new addition, sent a letter in, or have indicated their support otherwise.
In fact, I do have Greg Chandler and Diane Sacco. They're using their address as 153 Alvin Avenue, and they did write to the board in full support of.
There it is. I found it. I got it. Thank you. No, I think it's. I don't have any questions. I think has been well presented so far. I've got you gave us a good set of drawings and the plot plan, and I think I have a pretty good grasp of the situation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mr. Gray. We see Mr. Thomas McGrath out there in virtual land. Do you have anything?
No, I have nothing to add. I think Ben really covered, covered the waterfront there. I wasn't aware. Should have been. I wasn't aware of the paper street. I thought we were conforming on that side lot line when I designed it. But it would be a real hardship to pare that garage back. And so I would hope that the board would grant that variance as well.
Great. Let me just say that I've had an opportunity to look at the all of your plans that have been submitted. The additions look wonderful. They're really in scale with the existing property, and it looks like a wonderful project for a growing family that would be really an advantage and a benefit to the neighborhood and all of the abutters who sent in letters of support. Let me just ask generally, is there anyone out there who has any questions of the applicants? Okay, and nobody has any questions. Is there anyone who has not submitted a written letter of support but wishes to be heard at this hearing in support of the application for the 2 variances? All right, there's no such person present. Let me ask if there's anybody present in virtual land out there who wishes to be heard objecting to either of the 2 variances that are being applied for. Okay, and I hear no such person, so let me ask you, Mr. Kristen and Ben, do you have anything else you'd like to add in support of the application?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, most people under these circumstances would quit while they're ahead, so I think that's probably a good choice. So why don't we end the evidence portion of the hearing, and let's discuss the application on the merits, and we'll vote on these applications for variances here and now. So, Mr. Gray, do you want to be heard first?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Leonard. I think this looks like an excellent project for, a house in East Milton that needs more space for their family. The variances being asked for are not, extreme compared to other houses in the neighborhood. And I think that both the shape of the lot and the existence of that paper street put us within the statutory authority to grant a variance in this case, 2 variances in this case.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Mr. Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Gray. I think that the plans look great. I think that the proposed renovations look great. I think that we're within our statutory authority to grant the requested relief, and I wish you guys luck.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. I agree with my colleagues. I think this has been a beautifully presented application. All of the neighbors were consulted, they all assent. The improvement here is one which will enhance the view and the utility of the subject property. We see this so often in Milton. We have somewhat older dwellings, and they're single family and they conform, but the lot is either small or there are technical reasons why variances or special permits are needed. And one of the benefits of having a hearing presented in this manner is variances are difficult to get under the law, but this, as Mr. Gray has indicated, the shape of the lot, the non-existent street gives us a basis to grant the variance. And it's really in the public interest to grant this variance. We see a lot of young families, growing families. They need expansion, they need space for their families. And we don't want to encourage them to move to Stoughton or Randolph or Braintree or some other place. We like to keep these people in Milton. So I think it's a public service that we're doing, granting this type of relief. And I do have to compliment Mr. Miller. I think these plans are beautiful and the house is terrific, and it's a great situation for everybody. So all those in favor of granting the 2 requested variances together with our usual conditions, which I'll go over in a second, please say aye.
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 Okay, so congratulations on your variances.
Thank you.
What we have to do now is prepare a written decision, and we really prepare written decisions here. We don't have cookie cutter, cut and paste decisions. And regretfully, the board, I shouldn't say regretfully, but the board is burdened right now with the 4 large 40B projects that are really consuming a lot of our time. So we're a little bit slow getting the paperwork out on what I'll call regular zoning petitions like this one. But we'll get it out as quickly as we can. We know spring is coming at some point in time here, and we'd like to allow you to have your variance in full force and effect when your builder is ready to go. And you can deal with Mr. Miller, but he'll tell you once we sign the decision, we file it with the clerk, and there's a 20-day appeal period. Even though nobody has opposed this application, you still have to wait 20 days to make sure nobody files an objection or a lawsuit. Once the 20-day period is expired, then you're going to get a certified copy of the decision, and either Mr. Miller or Ms. Sutton, will tell you have to record that in the registry of deeds in Norfolk County. And they'll tell you approximately how much it costs and how you get that done. That's very important because you want to affirm the validity of your variance. And if you don't record it properly and the time passes, your variance will be null and void. And then you've got a builder out in the field and maybe it's half built and you have to come running back to us. And that's the last thing you want to do. So be a little scrupulous in getting your variance properly recorded at the registry.
Will do.
I'm sorry.
I said will do. Will do. We will. Yeah.
So congratulations on your variances and good luck in your construction project.
Thank you. Appreciate your time and your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Nick or
I'll do it if you want.
okay, great. Mr. Gray generously volunteered to write that decision. Thanks, Bill. Just give me 2 seconds to make some notes and we'll jump on to our third hearing of the evening. Alrighty, we have our third hearing of the evening. This is the application of Brian and Jessica Cherry, the applicants out there. Welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me read the application and do some of the preliminaries so we can proceed with the formal hearing. Looking at the paperwork here, it looks like both the Benjamin and Kristen Price, and Brian and Jessica Cherry have spoken with Mrs. McGetrick as to how to properly prepare an application for the Board of Appeals. So this may take a few minutes, but it's worth establishing the record. So this is the application of Brian and Jessica Cherry. It's dated January 7th, 2021. And they're seeking a finding from the Board of Appeals in the form of a special permit in accordance with Section 4 of the bylaw dealing with non-conforming uses of land, that the proposed changes which they're suggesting in their application are not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. Here, the applicants are requesting to add a 14-foot by 27-foot shed dormer on the third level of the property located at 31 Gordon Road in Milton. The property is in a Residence C zoning district, and it was built in approximately 1937 as a single-family home. The records aren't clear, apparently, when the addition to the right rear of the home was built, but it's only 0.75 feet from the right side lot line. And therefore, the building commissioner has deemed that the home is considered dimensionally protected and non-conforming. The architectural plans that are dated December 1st, 2020, showed that the addition would exceed the 2.5-story limitation as prescribed in section 5A1 of the zoning bylaw, which deals with building heights. There's a formula that most lay people, including myself, have difficulty understanding and articulating, but we put it in the ad, and basically, when you're trying to look at a half story, it's limited to 2/3 of the floor area of the floor immediately below, measured at 4 feet vertically from the floor to the roof surface. And here, the floor immediately below the addition is comprised of 757 square feet, and the allowable area of the addition above 4 feet would be 505 square feet. And so the addition is comprised of approximately 655 square feet above the 4-foot vertical line, all is set forth in the application. In addition to the advertisement, which I've read into the record, we do have the application. It's dated January 5, 2021. We have a letter from the Board of Appeals from Brian Cherry, which I think I will not read into the record. We'll hear from Mr. Cherry on that. We have a letter from Mr. Prondak, a denial letter dated 12/31/2020. We have a series, we have a plot plan of land by Robert E. Hannigan Associates, which is dated December 14, 2020, and it shows the subject property and the proposed addition. We have proposed addition and renovation plans by GPH Design. I need my magnifying glass. This is blurred a little bit, so I have to tell you, I'm not sure. Do you know where they're?
November 12th.
Okay, November 12th. Where are they located, Mr. Cherry?
Milton, Massachusetts, Adams Street.
Okay, great. So we have multiple sheets showing the proposed addition from various perspectives, inside, outside, and sideways. So we thank the applicants for filing all of those materials with us. We also have received some assents from neighbors and interested persons. I'm going to summarize these. Some of the letters are well, a lot are very similar. Looks like a standard form letter which people signed on to. So the first one is January 17, 2021. This was a letter from Brian and Jessica Cherry, and it went to George W. Mann and Kathleen Mann at 37 Gordon Road. They hope everyone's well. They talk about their plans and the various options. They've enclosed drawings of what it would look like. They'd be grateful if they could receive an assent. George Mann and Kathleen Mann do assent in writing to this application. We have another letter, same date, January 17, 2021. This letter is endorsed by Patricia Mullins and looks like Pete Z. Mullins, Patricia and Peter Mullen of 36.
Edward Ave.
Yeah, it is Avenue. It looked like Everett's one. So we thank the Mullins. We have another assented, same date, January 17th. Katie Brendan and Katie Lovett, Lovett, of 25 Gordon Road, send their assents and with their best wishes and full support for the application. We have another letter that's signed on the 19th of January 2021 from Janet, is it Bensinger? Something close to that. Maybe Bessinger, Besinger, of 30 Gordon Road, indicating that the addition sounds great. Best of luck with the project, and indicating the boys must be very excited. We have another letter, same date, 17th of January 2021, where Robin C. maybe Curley and Ted Curley Jr., yes, of 20 Gordon Road, and their best wishes and their assent to the project. We have another letter from Gretchen and Ray. Looks like Gretchen Carey and Ray Ching, dated of 24 Gordon Road. They hope all is well and wish you the best of luck on your project. They assent to the special permit that's being asked for. We have another letter. This is assented to on January 18th, 2021 by Donald J. Bertrand and Kathleen E. Bertrand of 17 Gordon Road, Milton, Massachusetts. And they hope everyone is well and hope the project goes well. And we have the last assent, same date, January 17th, 2021. It's from, I'm going to say Jacqueline Jacqueline and Carrie. Is it done?
Done, yes.
From Jacqueline and Greg. Is it Greg?
Greg Dunn, yes.
Yep. Of 14 Gordon Road, sending their assent, hoping everyone is well. So we thank the neighbors for assenting to this special permit application, and we certainly thank the applicants for doing all of the paperwork that and time and effort to get these assents. They're very, very important. So without further ado, Mr. and Mrs. Cherry, welcome to the Board of Appeals. And why don't you tell us about your application and why the board should grant the special permit?
For some time, we've been looking at different projects to expand the capacity in the room in the existing footprint. We didn't want to go to the left or to the right or up any higher. We wanted sort of to stay within the footprint because, you know, as most pieces of parcel in Milton, they're postage stamp sized lots. And we didn't want to infringe any further upon, you know, left or the right or the front or the back of the house toward people's property lines. And in doing so, we've been at this how many years? Several years with our architectural plans and submissions.
I think Mrs. Cherry wants to talk to her lawyer before she answers questions like that.
And probably 10 years. It feels like a lifetime.
So go on, Mr. Cherry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So finally, we came to the realization that we'll just utilize the space in the attic, which would require a walk-up stairs, which is taking away a little portion of the second floor, but it will enable us to have 2 bedrooms up there. Currently, we have 3 boys stuffed into one room, sharing one small closet. And as you can imagine, they're getting bigger and
They're looking for their privacy.
yes.
Well, I think that may be unconstitutional in any event.
I think so too.
But are your sons represented by an attorney here in this hearing?
I've hired one for each of them, as a matter of fact.
Well, we'll be delighted to hear from them. Well, why don't you continue with your application? I think you're long-suffering folks. I can't imagine. What ages are your boys, for the record? Approximately.
We have a Daniel is 16.
Yeah.
Christopher is 15. Stephen is 14, and his twin Abigail is also 14.
She does have her own
She
room,
has her
though,
own
for the
room.
record. We did not put her with them too.
Oh, that's really important. So this must be a very homey and friendly environment, but maybe a little bit too close for comfort. Why don't you continue, Mr. Cherry, with your application?
And so working with Glenn Hoffman, the architect, we finally came up with this final design plan, which we felt that we could move forward. And then after considering, not knowing that we were 150 feet over the limit, which would require us to come before your board for a grant, we were kind of already, not, already down the road a bit. And so here we are before you, asking for your consideration.
Basically, we started to clean out the attic already, which I guess is probably a good thing. We needed a head start on that anyway.
Well, you are not alone in that regard. I can certainly tell you that. Have you completed your presentation?
Yes.
And
Okay.
well, one last thing, just thank everybody in advance for, I know you mentioned how swamped you are with the 40 Bs. We do appreciate all of your time and consideration. And we're grateful for all of our neighbors who, one of us is joined on here, and many of them, as you know, wrote those letters. So we're very grateful to all of them.
There was one omitted. There was one letter of assent that it was they wrote on the bottom of one of the drawing schematics that we gave them. It was Scott Harris and Mary Haddad, number 32 Edward Ave, which is directly behind us.
Yes, we have it right here. It's
Okay.
It's written on sheet A 2.01 of Mr.
Yes.
Hoffman's design. I think, Mr. Hoffman, you may have another client in the offing here. I think they like your drawings, but they speak in support of the plan, and it's Scott D. Harris and Mary A. Haddad of 32 Edward Avenue, Milton. And so we'll add those folks to the pile of assents that you've previously given us. If you have nothing else to add, let me ask my colleagues if they have any questions of the applicants. Mr.
If I
Brown.
could just interrupt one more time, I'm sorry. If I could please be excused and leave you with Brian, I do have to take one of the boys to hockey. So I apologize. I'm going to jump off and leave the rest to Brian.
Well, I think Brian is now in deep trouble, but
Absolutely. If I could bring an earpiece with me, I would like to, but thank you all very, very much for your time. I appreciate it.
okay, be careful. It's getting a little icy out there, so watch the roads.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Cherry, we now have you. Let me see if my colleagues have any questions. Mr. Brown, do you have any questions of Mr. Cherry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't have any questions.
Okay, Mr. Nick Gray, do you have any questions of Mr. Cherry?
No, I don't. I think it's a great project. My only question, no, I don't have any.
Okay, well, I don't have any questions either. Let me ask, Mr. Cherry, is Mr. Hoffman going to testify tonight, or?
No, I didn't know he was needed, sir. I apologize.
Okay, no, that's fine. It's just that on our setup here, sometimes you see faces and there are no names attached to them until they start to speak. So I don't know who some of the people are there. So if do you have anything else to add in support of your application?
I do not.
Okay, great. Then let's see if there's anybody present this evening who has any questions of Mr. Cherry regarding this application. Okay, there's no person present. Is there anybody present who has not submitted a written assent but wishes to assent to this special permit application? Any such person who wants to speak in support of the special permit? Okay, there's no such person present. Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition to this application for a special permit? And again, there's no such person present. So unless you have something else to add, Mr. Cherry, will end the evidence portion of this hearing and discuss the special permit application here and now.
That is fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mr. Gray, do you want to be heard first?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Leonard. This is again another one of those cases. It's a very common situation that we have in town with our, as Mr. Cherry pointed out, postage size lots. I think that this project, in light of the circumstances of obviously needing to create more space for the children and not infringing on anyone else's, lot lines, I think that this particular solution gives the applicants this, well, I don't know that it gives them all the space that they need, but at least it moves them in that direction without really infringing at all on their neighbors. So I would tend to support this application. I think it's a good solution, both for the family and for the neighborhood.
All righty. Mr. Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with my colleague. I think that it's a great application. It's a good way to achieve the goals of Mr. Cherry and his family without infringing on his neighbors. And so I think plans look good, and I would be in favor of it.
Okay, well, I agree with my colleagues. I think this is the second application in a row that's been presented in a very professional manner without attorneys present, assent by all of the interested persons, wonderful drawings of proposed additions. And it's really, again, a wonderful opportunity to keep Mrs. Cherry in Milton, and let them enjoy being present in Milton and letting the boys have the space that young men need to have. So all those in favor of granting the special permit as applied for under section 4 of the bylaw, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Well, congratulations on your special permit. I don't know whether you heard the last application. We're a little bit delayed cranking out decisions here because of the special permit issues and COVID, but we'll do our very best to get this decision out as promptly as possible.
I appreciate it.
And then just be sure you talk with your architect or Mr. Prondak or Ms. Sutton, our senior principal clerk, and record the special permit in the registry of deeds so that your rights are permanently protected. Okay.
Thank you.
So congratulations on your project.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Good night, gentlemen.
Who wants to write this one? Mr. Brown?
I could do that. I'd be happy to.
Great.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you. Just hold on, folks. Give me a few minutes and we'll get going on our fourth and final hearing. Oh, Mr. Corcoran, there you are. You all set to proceed?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Brown, nice to be able to meet you after the snafu from a couple of weeks ago.
I know, likewise, Mr. Corcoran, good to see you.
Okay, let me take care of some of the preliminaries here. And we'll get this underway. Then first of all, you have to forgive me. I have to apologize. I don't speak Gaelic, but I think E-O-I-N is Owen, or a variant of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Oh, okay, good. So this is the application of Owen A. Barry. It's dated November 12, 2020, on file with the board, seeking a special permit here. The applicant is the owner of premises that are located at 572 Harlan Street, which was formerly and historically a caretaker cottage. The cottage is a relatively small dwelling located to the rear of a large property, which contains about 2 acres of land, which was part of even a larger estate that was subdivided in the 1900s. Here, the applicant has restored the cottage and built a new larger dwelling for himself and his family. The new dwelling is attached to the garage. Mr. Barry's mother-in-law and father-in-law, Ruth and John Walsh, plan to move into the cottage portion of the residence. They are requesting a special permit to live in that portion of the residence in accordance with the provisions of section 3A9 of the zoning bylaw, the so-called in-law apartment section. They're requesting also requesting in the form of variances that the temporary apartment be allowed to contain more than 800 square feet and more than 2 bedrooms. The application notes that on February 25, 2020, the Milton Building Commissioner cited the applicant by issuing violation notices for a failure to build according to the approved building plans, maintaining a 2-family home in a single-family district, and occupying both the original portion of the home and the larger new addition of the home prior to the issuance of a occupancy permit. So I've summarized the application. We'll have evidence at the hearing, an application dated November 12, 2020, filed by Mr. Corcoran on behalf of Ruth. Well, I guess okay. It's on behalf of the owner, Mr. Barry, and then on behalf of co-applicants, Ruth and John Walsh, they would be the tenants of the in-law apartment. We have a letter from Mr. Corcoran talking about the application, enclosing plans, as-built plans, historic records, photographs of the dwelling, and Google Earth images. Mr. Corcoran has a discussion of his views and opinions on this matter and a conclusion. And I won't go through all of the materials. Mr. Corcoran perhaps will as part of his presentation, but we have them here all on record, and they have been on record for a couple of months, I think. In addition to the application and materials, we have some, I'll call them assents by neighbors. We have an email from today, actually 6:25, by Leroy Cumberbatch. Well, Mr. Cumberbatch sends us an email, but he doesn't give us his name, but he lives in the area, obviously. And I'm not going to read his email address on the public record. Mr. Cumberbatch writes, this is to inform the town of Milton that I, Leroy Cumberbatch, and my wife, Janice Cumberbatch, do not have any objections to the proposed addition at 1042. I just don't know here. I think this must be for another hearing because it's an addition at 1042 Randolph Avenue. That has nothing to do with this particular application. Okay, so Mr. Cumberbatch is not involved or assenting or in opposition to this application. We have a letter from Nicholas S. Petricelli, dated January 27th, 2001. He lives at 560 Harlan Street. He's writing as a neighbor and a butter to Mr. Barry. He writes in support of the application for a variance so that his family may use the old caretaker cottage to the Forbes estate as an in-law suite for his wife's parents. Mr. Barry did a beautiful job in restoring the caretaker residence and in connecting it to the larger new home that he built. He writes, I understand that in-law suites are generally reserved for smaller areas within existing homes, but this area of Milton is unique given the very large lots in the AA zone and the significant setbacks of houses from each other. I also understand the concerns that some may have about the nature of in-law suites, but I believe that there are adequate safeguards in the bylaw to protect the neighborhood from potential abuses. So we thank Mr. Petricelli for his letter. We have a letter dated January 27th, and this is from Catherine, looks like
Sutphin.
Sutphin, and Michael Sutphin. They live at 590 Howland Street, and they're writing to the board in support of the application. Their letter is the same letter that Mr. Petricelli sent to the board, so I won't read it, but they sent to the application. They express the same concerns that Mr. Petricelli does regarding in-law apartments. We have another letter. It's the same style of letter. Looks like it's same content. January 27th, 2021. This is from Virginia McDonough, and I just have to. Michael C. McDonough, okay. And they are sent to this application as in the same form as the previous people. We also have a letter it's undated, but it came in within the last week or so. It's a fairly current letter to the Board of Appeals, and it's from Webster A. Collins of 533 Holland Street in Milton. He says, I'm writing this letter in opposition to the granting of the variance request of Owen A. Barry, dated November 12, 2020. Mr. Collins says this is a flagrant violation of the town zoning bylaw and that he called attention to this issue to the town when the permit was originally issued for this property. And by a copy of this letter, he's asking Mrs. McGettrick, an attorney who's appeared before us in the first hearing, to forward a copy of my letter to you. He suggests the applicant went forward with new construction knowing full well that 572 Holland Street was in a single-family historic district and that the approval of any zoning variance request would be akin to allowing spot zoning in Scott's Woods. He says, please uphold the decision of the Milton Building Commissioner and order demolition of the former Forbes family caretaker cottage. In my mind, this is an open and shut case. It should not be necessary to again retain legal counsel in my desire to protect Scott's Woods. Signed, Webster A. Collins, with a carbon copy to Marion V. McGettrick, attorney at law at 10 Crown Street in Milton, Massachusetts. So we thank Mr. Collins for his letter. I just should note for the sake of the record that we have not received a copy of this previous letter that Mr. Collins references, that in requesting Mrs. McGetrick to forward a copy to us. So those are the correspondence that we've received on this particular application. So Mr. Corcoran, a rather long preamble, but the hour is not too bad. It's only 8:25. So welcome to the Board of Appeals, and we're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Brown, Mr. Gray. It's a pleasure to be back in front of the board. I'm wondering if I might share the screen.
You certainly, you can. It's at your own risk. You'll know more about sharing screen than we have. We have difficulty getting online, but we're
Okay.
delighted to have you share the screen.
All right, now the question is, where did what I had available to me go? You're right, it is at my own risk.
No, take your time. We've got plenty of time. Take a few minutes.
What I'm trying to do is let's unshare for a moment. I'm trying to get access to a Maps Online aerial photo of the area, which I think will be helpful. Question is, can I do it?
Mr. Corcoran, I have a map of the property pulled up on my screen, and I think I know how to do it. If
Okay.
the rest of the board would feel comfortable with it, I could share my screen.
Well, I'm comfortable as long as Mr. Corcoran doesn't think the board is trying to outstage him in technology.
Whatever help I can get is great.
Thank you, Mr. Gray.
It's the first time that I've actually tried to share screen, and so I know that among the materials that I sent was photos from the town's website, the GIS website, which show the relationship of property. And what I was hoping to do was get one of those up and then scroll out a little bit. I think it's in part significant to note that of the 4 letters that were submitted, 3 of which arrived today, obviously, in support, they are immediate abutters to the property. The Petrocellis are immediately in front of the property on Harlan Street at 560. The Sutphins live immediately behind this property. Actually, it's interesting. The Sutphin lot does not have frontage, but was created as part of a larger subdivision plan of the former Forbes estate. The Alexander Forbes estate is a historic estate here in Milton. And then the third one from the McDonoughs lived directly across the street from the driveway to this property. Mr. Collins is a couple of properties down and across the street. He's not an immediate abutter, and known Webb for a long time. He's certainly has significant interest in how the town is developed, and appreciate obviously his concern here. But I think in this case, as I'll walk through, it's a concern that I think can easily be mollified and hopefully be addressed favorably by the board. Sort of historically, as I said, this property goes back to the Forbes family, descended from for many generations here. Alexander Forbes lived in the property at 610 Harlan Street, and the property was a large estate with a number of different property features on it. This property, 572, was divided It's almost 3 acres. It's 2.8 acres in size. And there was a very small carriage house caretaker's house where the caretaker lived who took care of the larger estate. That is the property that was purchased by Mr. Barry. And his original plan was to demolish the caretaker house and just build the new larger house. In fact, submitted a letter to the building department in late 2016 to that effect. When the property was finished, I think you realized a couple of things. One, if as restored, it is a beautiful building in its own right. And two, would be subject to the town's demolition delay law, which is now any building that's deemed historic would take 2 years to demolish before you get permission to demolish. And so at the end point was, rather than demolish, was to find a way to incorporate the historic structure into the larger single family home. His in-laws were at the time contemplating coming over to be here. They're from Ireland. Both Mr. Barry and his wife Lisa are from Ireland. When they speak, they'll jump right out at you. But Mrs. Barry's parents are older. Father is 84 years old. Mother is 78 years old. Neither is in great health. Have come to this country permanently as of early 2019, and the goal is for Mrs. Barry for them to live in the carriage house, and for Mrs. Barry to become their primary caretaker. There is really a shortage, if you will, in Milton of access to assisted living type facilities, and the goal is for them to live quasi-independently in a separate quarters, and for a permit to be granted that would, consistent with the bylaw, be limited to the extent of their stay. Mr. Walsh is wheelchair bound. He was injured last year, and Mrs. Walsh has now been diagnosed with early Alzheimer's, and so the Barrys feel it's very important and appropriate that they have direct and primary contact with the in-laws for the remainder of their lives, and would live out here. They also have 2 children, a 17-year-old high school student and an 11-year-old middle school student living with them, and so kind of difficult for the in-laws to be living within the same residence area as the primary family. And as an alternative, what's interesting is that the property next door at 610 Harlan Street was essentially razed and rebuilt. That property was formerly owned by the Falcone family when at a point in time several years ago, and they had restored that to its original condition. The most recent buyers saved just enough of the structure to avoid the demolition delay bylaw, but developed a magnificent and beautiful new home that's substantially larger than what was there before. So they obviously took one tack, the Barrys took another, and with some of my advice at the time was to pursue the completion of the property, and that we would apply at the right time for the variances and the special permits. A couple of things happened along the way. I took Mr. Prondak through the property last February. You've seen, I think, his letter to Mr. Barry that came as a result of that. But I invited Mr. Prondak to walk through and to see the property. At the time, the carriage house was not inhabited. Mrs. Barry's parents were still in Ireland at the time, and that we took them through and showed it, but with the full intention that we would file an application with this board for the relief that we requested. In fact, I knew the letter was coming, and the original application was prepared to be filed in March. But then COVID hit. And Mr. Prondak and I agreed with each other that we would delay on the filing of the application until such time as we knew where things were happening from a hearing perspective with this board and other boards. And so rather than file and then pen some date, I held until it was clear that this board was receiving and applications and conducted hearings, and Mr. Prondak and I agreed that we'd do that, and I filed it forthwith at that time. Since then, as I say, in March, the Walshes have arrived permanently in this country. They're living permanently with the Barrys. They're here. They need direct assistance from Mrs. Barry, and so we'd request the board's consideration. Certainly, if this were another thing that's particularly unique, I think, about this property in this area is that this is the large lot section of Milton. These lots are zoned AA, and many of the lots are significantly larger than the 80,000 square foot minimum that's necessary for these lots. They're magnificent and beautiful homes that you wouldn't see in most other parts of Milton. And homes that are uniquely designed with a grandeur to them, but are not designed to be thought of as a two-family or multifamily. They are uniquely single-family with plenty of living area associated with that. And so it's, as I've always understood in my conversations with Mr. Barry, is that the clear intent was to make room for his in-laws and to use this for that purpose. There's never any intention to create a two-family dwelling and whatnot. The other thing that's unique is that the carriage house, which is a magnificent example of old architecture, is larger than 800 square feet. And it was difficult, I think, to integrate an addition to the carriage house that would be substantial enough for the Barrys to move into with their own family, and to also have room to have an in-law suite with it. As we indicated, their initial intent was to raise the carriage house upon the completion of the main building. But as they were completing that effort, became clear that the Walshes needed to come and be with their daughter and to have room to be there. So normally you would say, yes, in all over Milton, the bylaw that allows an in-law apartment applies if you have a segregable area within your home, no more than 800 square feet and no more than 2 bedrooms. What's different here is that we have an existing dwelling that's historic, that is more than 800 square feet and has 3 bedrooms, not 2 bedrooms. And so it's that piece of the bylaw that we're requesting a variance so that they have the ability to use this historic structure for the purpose that they would otherwise be allowed to do if it were more specifically part of the integrated into the main component of the house. And so I think it's the area is unique. The final thing I would say is that the building itself, property is set well back from the street frontage. It's over 400 feet from the street frontage to the house itself. It is screened on all sides significantly by mature plantings and other plantings that have been added. So the scale of the house, although similar to others, is large and gracious, is also set back and away from, as all of these large dwellings are, they're well set back from each other and well set back from the street. So with that, I would turn it to the board for any questions that you may have. Mr. and Mrs. Barry are obviously available with us on Zoom and can speak in response to any particular questions that you may have. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Corcoran. Mr. Gray, do you have any questions of Mr. Corcoran or the applicants?
Yeah, I think so. I've read the application. I've been thinking a lot about this case today. I've read the letters in support and Mr. Webb Collins's opposition. And what my question is, given the fact that this is a bylaw that Section 3A9 applies to the entire town, and it was a contentious discussion when this came up at town meeting approving this bylaw. It's very restrictive. We've had lots of difficulty, I would say, implementing it over the years. And what you're asking us to do is to approve the special permit for the apartment, which I get in this case. I think it makes sense in many ways. I can absolutely see the need. But you're asking us for variances of increasing the apartment size from 800 square feet and adding bedrooms. And if the town meeting had wanted the zoning AA lots to have a larger apartment size, they could have written that in. They didn't. And so we're sort of left with the standard of our variance granting authority under the statute to come up with a justification for allowing it in this case. Can you speak to the specific elements that are in our statutory authority that would allow us to grant those two variances in this particular case?
I think the two things. One, I think that it's easy to comply with the notion of 2 bedrooms versus 3 because they can simply convert 1 bedroom to to just a vacant room. It's there. We can consider it a bedroom or not. The particular other issue is I'm not sure you can divide that house into an 800 square foot section. Mm-hmm. Perhaps we could. That would then be occupied with the balance unoccupied. That's possible. The hardship, I think, is a couple of things. One is, the straight hardship issues around land, topography, etc., are difficult to address, except that this is a uniquely large lot in an area. Well, it's large in an area that is unique, has uniquely large lots, and so many extremely large homes. But in this case, they took on the notion of redeveloping a historic structure. And that historic structure, they had to pay attention to the integrity of that structure in redeveloping that. And it was difficult to integrate that structure without sort of connecting it in a way to a larger structure without just building up and around it. The structure itself didn't lend itself to that. So I think the hardship goes to the issues associated with preserving and maintaining and restoring a small historic structure that didn't fit the context of today's family. And that when they were going through the process of building, they arrived at the second hardship, which is Lisa Barry's parents are older and need her assistance. And there is really inadequate facility. There are waiting lists on senior facilities here in Milton. There is no assisted living here in Milton. I'd say Milton is the hole in the donut, if you will, for a lot of different uses. Some of it intentional by the way the town was zoned, some of it accidental. But there is no assisted living. And there's no place in Milton for today without waiting lists for the Walshes to come to. So it's a two-pronged argument to the variance question. One being the notion of preserving, restoring a historic building that is larger than 800 square feet, but certainly not large enough and difficult to incorporate into a new main house. And B, the issues associated with Mrs. Barry's parents. You know, I could ask Mr. Barry where it's possible to sort of shut off areas of that dwelling easily to create an 800 square foot area, and we could mark that and do that in a way, but I think that would create additional difficulty for the Barrys to do.
Thank you, Mr. Corcoran.
Mr. Gray, do you have any other questions?
I don't.
Mr. Brown, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I have a few questions. I agree with Mr. Gray that what the applicants are asking for makes a lot of sense. I also recognize the difference between, having a limit of 800 square feet for the, 96%, 98% of the houses in Milton makes sense. When you expand the size of the house, 800 square feet amounts to a much smaller proportion of the average house size. I'm also aware of what our limitations are as an entity in terms of how we rule and the leeway that we have vis-a-vis the bylaw. My question, I guess, is for the applicants, and that is, years and years in the future, if we were to grant the variance, it would be restricted to just your parents and your in-laws, and their names would be on the variance. And way down the road, if your parents are no longer living there, what would be your intention for that part of the house? Would you be incorporating it into the rest of the structure, or have you even thought that far ahead? And this may have no bearing on how we rule, but this is just personal curiosity, just trying to get my hands around this.
We kind of haven't thought that far ahead, but it was built in a way that they are connected, as well connected as we could. There's an actual staircase right in the middle where the connection is, so you can walk straight through. So we just, it's designed for her parents to talk to the 800 square foot law. They can't even go upstairs anymore. So, and I know that doesn't really matter, but all the bedrooms upstairs are now non-usable. So we've incorporated the actual mudroom where we were connecting the old cottage to our home. The mudroom is now their bedroom because, again, they can't go upstairs anymore. So to answer your question, down the road, just kind of becomes a hangout area. As we drew in the original drawings, it was going to be a kind of a get-together room for our kids or whatever, with bedrooms upstairs that we will probably never use. So it was always our thought process that eventually her parents would be.
And we had talked, Owen, about the notion of one of the things you'd have to do is disengage the kitchen, uncouple the kitchen. So you wouldn't have a complete separate living quarters. The kitchen would have to be completely taken apart. And one of the things that perhaps I would suggest, it's similar to an outcome in a caretaker situation that I know that Mr. Lennon was involved with the board on Adams Street, where there was a separate caretaker, a separate house that was pool house that was converted into a house. Is that in that case, the relief was granted as requested, but one of the conditions was that the property owner had to report annually in writing to Mr. Prondak, identifying who is living in those premises for what purpose. And so certainly this could be a condition here. I know these permits normally last for 4 years. The variance is different because it's a variance we run with the land subject to the conditions associated with that. But I think it would be a reasonable condition to request here is that the Barrys report annually to the building commissioner regarding occupancy, and then at such point as they're no longer occupying, they would then have to meet the requirements of the bylaw to remove the kitchen.
Right, and one of our main reasons for holding on to it was when we knew my mother was getting progressively into the Alzheimer's, I took some support groups in Bridges in Westwood, and they told us it's better for her if everything is the same, no changes. And to me, that's our driving force, is the two of them. That's our driving force for this house. You know, it's easier for me as a caretaker to go into them on the one level, and nothing has changed for her. So that's where it's coming from on a personal basis.
I completely understand, and that makes a lot of sense. Thank you both. I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I have a lot of questions, Mr. Corcoran. First of all, I don't think we have enough facts that you've told us about that are important for this particular application. What I'd like to do is ask you some basic questions about the caretaker's house, what it was like, what was done to it, and what it looks like now, because we haven't toured it. It's my understanding. Let me ask you this. The caretaker's house is a two-story building, is it not?
Yes,
Okay. And does it have 3 bedrooms?
there are 3 bedrooms on the second floor.
Okay. How about the first floor?
No, except for the mudroom, which is that connects between the two,
Yep.
which has been converted to a bedroom for the Walshes. And so that they're living on the first floor with the kitchen and the bathroom and the mudroom as their living quarters. That's directly connected to the main house, and they're not using the second, as Mr. Barry just said, that they're not using the second floor at all. The second floor is closed off.
So practically speaking, there are 3 bedrooms in this house.
Yes.
Okay. What is the gross floor area of the first floor? I have it at 916 square feet, but tell me if I'm wrong. I'm not a builder.
That could be true.
Yeah, well, I think to the room that is now their bedroom, that would be the mud room,
It's the same.
would be on our side of the house now. So that was originally kind of I would say a 4-season porch in the caretaker's lodge or whatever you want to call it. So
The footprint
it
is the
may
same.
be, yeah, maybe less that, you know.
Well, do you know what the gross floor area of the first floor is?
I'll get it.
I don't have it.
I might have it here. Hold on.
I'm looking at the as-built plans that I think one of the plans that we submitted.
With these on.
First floor is 975 square feet.
Yeah, that's what I have, Mr. Corcoran. I must have taken it from the same drawing.
And I would note that the town is considering an amendment to the bylaw, which would increase the maximum square footage to 900 square feet. This would still be 75 square feet greater. But there is an amendment that's coming to town meeting this spring that would merge the caretaker and detached family temporary apartment provisions into a single bylaw, and that there's a maximum area of 900 square feet that would be allowed in that.
What's the gross area of the second floor? I have it as 786 feet.
I see that in this plan.
Okay. So we have, is it fair to say, or I'm misstating it, that the gross livable area of the so-called cottage section is about 1,761 square feet?
That's a fair calculation, yes.
Okay. And it contains technically 3 bedrooms. And how many bathrooms that are in the carriage house?
I see one on the first floor plan, and
I think there's one on the second floor.
there's one on the second.
The 2 bathrooms. Okay. What is the gross square living area of the, I'll call it the principal dwelling, the building that that Mr. Barry built and that is attached to the cottage?
It looks like new first floor area of 3,978 square feet. And second floor area new 3,261 square feet.
It's not 12,188 square feet.
There's a grand total, including basement, storage, front porch, rear porch, garage, side porch, patio, deck, first and second floor of both the new and the old of 12,186 square feet.
Okay, so that's both of them. So you'd
Correct.
have to subtract the 1,700 from that.
That's right.
Okay.
But
So the new dwelling is 10,500 square feet, more or less.
more or less, including these other, basement area, et cetera. The basement itself is 3,000 square feet.
Okay. Can you tell me what was the reason why prior to the building actually taking place and the renovation of the cottage that you've discussed, why wasn't an application for an in-law apartment filed at that time rather than after the whole project was built out?
That's a good question, and it's a question I'm not sure that we can answer.
We're not in this position now if that had been done.
We would have, and the preferable way to do things, obviously, was to be to file in advance and request permission, and we didn't, and here we are. So we certainly apologize for.
Because I think you told us that Mr. Prondak went through this building in 2018 with you.
No, in 2019, a year ago.
Okay, 2019. Do you remember when? in 2019?
Yes, he and I went through together on February 2020, excuse me, is last year. I forget that we're now in 2021. It was last February, it's almost a year ago.
Okay,
I think we were met by a housekeeper.
and when was the built, do you know when the building permit for the new addition was taken out?
October of 2017.
Okay. You've told us that the Walshes, I believe their name is, began occupying the premises in 2020.
Yes,
Is it March of 2020?
I think that's right. Yes.
Okay, and they began occupying the building without an occupancy permit. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't know exactly when they started occupying in this area. Owen or Lisa, do you know?
When her parents occupied, when they came from Ireland that time, wasn't it?
Yeah.
March.
It's in March, April.
Okay, so March, April, and May of 2020.
Yeah.
But there's been no building permit issued for their occupancy. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. There was we had an application ready to file with this board in February of last year that was delayed due to COVID. But no,
We've had COVID for a couple of years now, haven't we?
no, we've had it for just under a year.
Okay. Let me ask you, but you didn't file.
Correct.
When does Mr. and Mrs. Barry have an occupancy permit to be living in their portion of the premises?
No,
No. Is that true?
no.
Can you explain the renovations that were made to the kitchen in the carriage house?
None,
Nothing.
None.
none.
The kitchen wasn't substantially improved with new appliances and
No, it was exactly the same.
it's exactly, it wasn't touched at all.
Not totally. We
Painted.
painted the kit, painted the whole house.
You have a picture of the interior portion of the carriage house? Or do you have a series? I didn't see any, Mr. Corcoran, that you supplied the board with.
No, I didn't.
Okay, do you have any pictures or you don't have them?
I don't have any of the interior. Perhaps they do. I provided photos of the outside.
Yeah, I could almost bet that the listing when we bought it would show interior pictures that
Not the
would
same.
be exactly what the interior looks like now. We renovated a bathroom to make it handicap accessible, and we pulled permits and everything for that, but we did not touch the kitchen. Appliances, countertops, cabinets, nothing.
So other than the bathroom, what other repairs were made? I'll say repairs or improvements were made to the carriage house.
New windows. I believe we did a roof and we re-sided.
And so the only improvement was the bathroom. But that was the only interior improvement that you made to the place.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, I don't think I have any further questions at the present time. Mr. Corcoran, do you have anything further to add?
No, I think explained, I think, as clearly as I could, the position that we have.
Okay, look,
Thank you for your-
let me ask you one question, and I know it's a rhetorical question. I don't want to be overly difficult. But when we're assessing this application, we have to think of two things. One, the variances and the difficult standard that you have to meet to get a variance, particularly if it's opposed, and then the special permit issue. Is there a question in this application about equal application of this family in-law apartment bylaw in different parts of the town? Or
I think there's a question in every variance application that comes before the board on equal application. And every case is unique and different. I don't know whether when this bylaw was debated, whether it was considered at all for this parts of areas. There's lots of, what's interesting is many of these older, larger lots have had separate caretaker dwellings on them, such as this one, where other people lived on one large estate. That's unique to the larger lot areas of the town. It's much less common in other parts of town. You know, it's conceivable that that in some cases that the Barrys could have acquired 2 lots and left the carriage house on one lot and built a new one on another lot and would have had the similar condition. They can't quite do it because you don't have 80,000 square, I don't think you get 80,000 square feet with both if you divided this lot. But one of the interesting things is, obviously different than you see in other parts of town, is that the property immediately behind it has no frontage, but it was created as part of the subdivision of this historic estate. And so, yes, it is unique. And I think every situation in this town is unique. I never come before this board.
Let me ask you this. Let me ask you, can you name any in-law apartments that have been granted by the Board of Appeals that have contained over 1,000 square feet in the last 4 or 5 years?
No, I can't, but I can't, but has the board granted in-law apartments in this part of Milton?
Well, no, my question is, do you think it makes a difference that if you live in East Milton, you have to cram your parents into an 800 square foot in-law apartment, but if you live in this beautiful section of the town, you can have them live in a house and claim it's an in-law apartment? I mean, is there a question of equal application of the bylaw here involved in this case? And it's not a question that Mr. Barry's saying, I've got this little house and it's 950 square feet, but this is thousands of square feet. This is a livable house.
This is now thousands of square feet with a large new structure added to a small pre-existing structure.
Right.
And I think as a matter of, look, I understand the concern about equal application, but
How do you answer that?
as a matter of degree, you know, if you're in most other parts of town, you're on smaller lots with houses that are smaller and don't have the space to create more than 800 square feet.
But the bylaw says 800 square feet.
Understood. And that's why in this case, there's a unique component to this that I think merits consideration of a variance from that standard. And I think the board has the right to grant that variance.
Well, based upon personal reasons of the health of the.
No, based on the fact that they undertook to maintain a historic dwelling, connected it to a new dwelling, rather than raise this, they could raise it tomorrow. They could come back to the board with an application for 800 square feet within this much larger building, and the historic commission will go crazy because now we're tearing down a historic piece of Milton.
No, but let me ask you this, that you didn't tell us that, what's Mr. Barry's occupation?
Contractor.
Say it again.
You're a contractor. You build houses for a living, don't you?
Not really, no.
No?
No.
Then what do you build?
Commercial contractor. Office fit outs is my main feature.
Yeah, I think I saw on your website you'd built some apartments in Boston, haven't you, rather recently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We-
You've been, tell me, how many years have you been a contractor?
25.
Okay, great. And how many employees do you have in your business, roughly speaking?
15.
So, Mr. Corcoran, isn't it possible if you wanted to, it may be expensive, it may be difficult, it may be awkward, you could take the carriage house and convert it into an in-law apartment and have less than a couple of thousand square feet, couldn't you?
Absolutely. And if we said today, given the fact that his parents are not ambulatory and are limited to one floor, you said as a condition of this permit that we would restrict it to the first floor of the carriage house and close off the second floor, that's certainly an acceptable condition. You know, we're trying to avoid the notion of going through the demolition process with the historical commission at this point.
Okay, I don't think I have any more questions. Do you have anything else further you want to add?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have you have no other witnesses and no other evidence?
No. This is what I
Okay.
have. Thank
Mr.
I'm happy if the board would like a view before we close the hearing, we'd be happy to arrange that. That would be up to the board's discretion.
Okay, well, I'll talk to my fellow colleagues. Mr. Gray, in light of the questions, do you have any further that you want to?
Yeah, my question is, obviously, I'm working from home here, and I don't have the benefit of all pieces of the file. But I know that this special permit, if we're going to comply with every provision, which we have to, of paragraph 9, we need things like a plan for the removal of the kitchen, how it can be inexpensively and easily, what's the phrase, inexpensively and easily or something incorporated back. Do we have all of the elements that we're supposed to have? And we've been presented with all of the elements in the plan that we have to incorporate into the permit. Should we even grant it? Have we been given that information?
Mr. Corker, do you want to answer that? Because I didn't see that in the materials.
The parking plan, incorporating the plan for incorporating the kitchen back. I mean, I heard from the question, I mean, it's the existing kitchen that was in the house originally. Is that, I mean, a literal interpretation of the bylaw would suggest that you have to rip it out when the in-law apartment ceases to be an in-law apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
If I did not file a separate plan, I'm happy to do that if that's helpful.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily helpful to me. It's just it's an element that's required in the bylaw before we can grant the permit. You know, I think
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying.
As I saw the as-built plans, I thought that they were sufficient to identify what would be necessary. We're happy to provide a simple plan showing how we would remove the kitchen and incorporate. I mean,
the initial plan shows that, Ned.
Okay, it's very small. It's hard for me to read, so that's why I'm asking if it's there, if we got it, because if we were to grant the permit, and I totally understand the need for it, I'm just trying to make sure that we've got all of the elements that we would need to grant it should we decide we can, and that it meets that any variance standard is met. That's, so that was my only observation in listening to what you were saying, Mr. Leonard. So I'll thank you.
Mr. Gray, what do you say about viewing the premises?
I mean, I'm certainly open to doing it. If the other board members would think it would be helpful, it could be very helpful to see it. I mean, I grant you that this is an unusual situation, and given that it's we're trying to preserve a historic structure. I get all of that, and I kind of like the overall concept, but what I like is not necessarily what the bylaw says. So obviously, I mean, if you could be helpful to answer your question, Mr. Leonard.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, do you have any questions that you want to add before we move on?
No, I mean, I echo Mr. Gray's thoughts. It's one of the reasons why I asked what the plans were for when the unit ceases to be an in-law apartment. I would just suggest that, we're up against the bylaw. We can do what we can do. And any information that we have that would aid us in navigating the bylaw would be helpful. I'd be up for doing a site visit. I'd also be willing to grant Mr. Corcoran some time to supplement his application if that's necessary, and that would help the applicant. Totally open to that, but I don't have any other questions.
Okay, great. My thought is you've submitted a lot of materials, and they're very good and very helpful, and some beautiful pictures. But the real stuff that's of relevant, I think you have not submitted. And that's what the interior of the cottage looks like, and whether it's been improved or not improved, and all of that. So, you spent a lot of time and money on this, and I certainly would be willing to accept your offer to have a site visit or review. It's sometime that's convenient to the Walshes so that they're not imposed on. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'd be helpful. I think it also would be helpful if you did provide supplementation in terms of more plans and specifications. I think that'd be helpful.
Mr. Chair, if I may, to one addition is that I'm confused a little bit as to what we're being asked here. Are we being asked to issue a variance on the entire carriage house or just the first floor? And I think it would be easy for us to make our determination if we had a little more clarity in that respect.
Well, I think unless I'm wrong, but Mr. Corcoran can correct me, I think the variance is to allow the temporary apartment to contain more than 800 square feet. That's number one. And secondly, the bylaw says it can only have 2 bedrooms, and here it has 3 bedrooms. So I think that's the scope of the variance as it's presently being requested.
With the board's permission, if
Special
given the recent change in the health of the Walshes and the fact that they're now only confined, I would offer to do a couple of things. One would be to supplement the application to clarify the living area that would now be requested, because certainly the second floor of the carriage house is really off limits to them, and that could be closed off, and then we would come in with specifications relative to how the kitchen appliances would be removed in accordance with the bylaw. And in addition, happy to host a site walk, and then we started with a request that the historic nature of this cottage, this caretaker cottage, was the entirety of the area that would be subject to this request. I understand that there's difficulty associated with that, and given the more recent changes to the health of the Walshes, that the first floor is sort of a confined area, that we could modify the request in that regard. May be able to get down to 800 square feet, given the layout and the proximity of the area that they're living in relative to the main house, and eliminate the need for variances. I think that would be helpful.
Well, it would be helpful because I don't have to tell you, Mr. Corcoran, you're next.
I know. And so I would appreciate the opportunity to amend it in that way, and to file some supplemental plans to meet the board's concerns about the specific specific other components of the bylaw. Our original intent, as I said, was to seek permission to utilize the entirety of this carriage house, and understand that creates a problem.
Yeah, it does. And my concern is that we do have a neighbor here, well known to everyone, who opposes this application for variance, and maybe the special permit too, I don't know. But achieving the standard of variance on the facts of this case are very, very difficult. And if there are ways of avoiding variances, you're far better off.
Always the case.
In the special permit context, we have much more discretion than we do in granting variances. And on this set of facts, you really may have some difficulty on the variance issue. Does it make any sense, Mr. Corcoran, for us to continue this hearing to?
It would. I know that scheduling gets into other hearings, but perhaps a 6 o'clock in the evening time slot in advance of some other time that is already scheduled for a 40B hearing. Or
I really don't want to do that, because the 40B hearings are going from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock. And I don't want to go from 6 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
No, I'm just suggesting that I think that I think that a second night would take perhaps a half hour.
Okay,
And if you went from 6 and, with a hard stop in time to start the next Zoom hearing, I think we can certainly work to accommodate that timeframe unless there's an open other evening that's
Well,
available.
I think we can find some open other evening. Miss Sutton indicates that can be done. Do you have any dates that you can pick out of there?
I do, I just can't remember what we continued the ice house to.
The Ice House is continued to February 28th or the 29th.
Perfect, so I have February 24th and 25th.
Ms. Sutton says February 24th or 25th may be available. Does that give you sufficient time to
Yes,
get it, whatever paperwork you need?
yes,
And to maybe revise and redefine what your in-law apartment really is going to look like?
yes, certainly. That's plenty of time. And if the board wanted to consider a site walk, I'm sure any Saturday morning, other than this Saturday, when I'm going to be away, would work. 6/13.
Okay. I think we want to be sure. I don't know who else is present. We haven't asked any abutters or I don't see Mr. Collins present, but maybe there are people out there who also want to be heard and may actually want to participate in a view of the interior.
I think we can manage that safely. I think, given the fact that the in-laws are on the first floor, they can be moved to another area of the main house during the time frame so that they're not inconvenienced. And
Okay, let me do this. Let me take a second, Mr. Corcoran, to, under this visual or virtual system here, I've got a little screen in front of me and I see 7 people, okay, including myself. So I don't know who else is out there in virtual land, but let me just ask, is there any,
Joe.
yeah, I see Mr. Prondak is there.
He wants to say something.
Do you want to be recognized, Mr. Prondak?
I think it's important to say a couple of things. Yes.
Go ahead.
Joe Prondak, Building Commissioner. So I just want to, given the fact that this is a public hearing and we're here as a result of an enforcement order as opposed to a standard application. And I think this reflects on my office and how we do our job and how we perform our enforcement and administration of the bylaw for the town. So back when Mr. Barry first applied to build his house, he sought to tear down the existing single-family home. What may have been, as Mr. Cochran says, a carriage house or a servant's quarters at one time, but most recently it has been a single-family home. I think the previous owner was a gentleman named Patrick Donnelly. So it was certainly used as a single-family home most recently. So he applied, he was going to tear down that house, but because of its age, we had to send it to the Historic Commission. The Historic Commission found that it was preferably preserved. So Mr. Barry decided to build his addition, new home and maintain the existing structure and make it part of the new home, except that his first set of plans showed the kitchen remaining in the existing home. And I denied the permit. I said, no, we can't, because that's then a 2-family. So he had to revise the plans to show the existing home with the kitchen removed. And that's the permit those are the plans that we issued the permit on. So from day one of the permit issuance, it was understood that that kitchen was to be removed and this was to remain a single-family home. And then as the project took a long time, it was a big house, certainly. But as it came time for final inspections, my inspectors who in the field told me that they have not yet been able to get into the existing home to view whether or not the kitchen had been removed. That caused, so they didn't issue an occupancy permit or approve final inspections. So we sent Mr. Barry a letter saying, hey, we have to go in and see this. That's what triggered Mr. Barry arranging the appointment with me and Mr. Cochran to view the house. And that's when I discovered the actual violation. That being said, with respect to the special permit process, yes, it is a requirement that the applicant submit to the board a removals plan. And it's also a requirement, it is a requirement of the bylaw that persons receiving the special permit report to the building commissioner annually that the premise is still occupied as the special permit intended, or that the premises are occupied. My other concern, I understand it's likely a dire situation for the Barrys with the Walshes, but it seems that they've moved the Walshes into the new house, into the existing house after the violation notice was written, and subsequently have converted the mudroom into a bedroom. That action by itself requires a building permit. Whenever you take a room that's not a bedroom and convert it into a bedroom, it requires a building permit because there is a requirement for what's called an emergency escape window, and there's a requirement for a smoke detector, which again has not been done. I've received no such application. There's also a concern with the health department for the sizing of the septic system as septic system design is based on number of bedrooms. So, I heard earlier in I think Mr. Petruccelli's letter that there are sufficient tools within the bylaw to ensure compliance. And certainly there are, but there have been a number of steps here when compliance with the bylaw has simply been ignored. And that's just a fact. I'm just stating a fact. And it makes the job of this office in enforcing and properly administering the bylaws, we're charged with that duty, makes it very difficult. I just think it's important to have those facts out in the public hearing. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Prondak. Let me ask you if we were to take a view of the premises, would you be able to accompany us on that view? Would you want to, or have one of your inspectors?
I certainly could. Would that have to be a public meeting as
Yes,
well?
it would be. But we can pick a particular date and you can.
Yeah,
be
most
there.
Saturdays are good for me.
Most Saturdays?
Mhm.
Okay. You know what's the Saturday after your mini vacation, Mr.
A week from Saturday will be February 6th.
Okay. Nick and
That's fine. We're not going anywhere, so
I don't think we can go anywhere.
I'm not sure I could. Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Brown, is the 6th good for you for a view of the premises?
The 6th in the morning works for me, yes.
What's a good time, Mr. Corcoran?
Whatever works for the board. 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock? And we can publish that and post it if some member of the public wanted to attend.
Okay.
That's fine. And in terms of the continuance date, we're talking about the 24th or the 25th. Now, does that give you sufficient time, Mr. Corcoran, to gather the materials you need? The septic system was raised by Mr. Prondak. I don't know whether that has to be tested or what needs to be done. I'm not a builder, but whether
I
I don't know whether that gives you time. There's no sense in jamming you here. I mean, we've been waiting for 8 months or 10 months, so if you need more time, take it. That's my deal.
That's fine. The separate issue is that I'm representing the neighborhood at 648 Canton Avenue, and that hearing is due to start on the night of March 9th, and then takes up a whole lot of nights thereafter, assuming that, well, it's currently scheduled. It starts on March 9th. Perhaps the week of March 1st would be, that'd be an additional week. It would certainly give us a little bit more time. I anticipate we should be able to pull this all together in a couple of weeks, but I appreciate the board.
Right. I mean, if you can't do it, we can always continue it. Sutton says it has to go over, if we don't do something within a couple of weeks, then it's going to have to go over to March 17th or 18th, which is right in the middle of your Canton Avenue extravaganza.
Well, that night, I don't know whether that night is dedicated to the Canton Avenue extravaganza or not, but 17th would be fine, I think. If that is an open night on the board's calendar, that's certainly a night that would work.
Does that sound good, Mr. Brown and Mr. Gray?
Yes.
March 17th, that's St. Patrick's Day. I mean, there may be some.
Well, I do have a nice tie that I can wear.
Okay.
I'm open that night.
Nick?
Yes, that's fine.
So we'll do March 17th at, what's a convenient time? Usual time? 7:15, 7:30?
7 is great, if that works. We all, you all work during the day, and you volunteer your time for this, so whatever is most convenient for you.
Can I just, we're not around that time?
You're not around.
Well, you'll be celebrating that special.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Maybe that's Saturday after.
No, not for a hearing. Do you think on that if that what you've heard regarding the things that we will need, you and I need to talk tomorrow, but the additional things that we can produce it in time for a hearing on February 24th or 25th? That's a month.
You certainly can try it, and if you have.
Why don't we do that? And then if for some reason I need to ask for further continuance, I can do that. But I think better to move quickly. In any event, we should be moving quickly to get you the supplemental material.
Okay, that sounds fine.
That's fair to the board.
24th or 25th for you.
Either night, 25th, if that works.
Thursday the 25th, and Mr. Brown, is that good?
Yes, that works.
And Nick Gray?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so we're going to go Thursday the 25th, and that'll be at 7 o'clock in the evening. And you'll get to us any revised plans or memos or materials 3 or 4 days before that, so we'll have an opportunity to review them if you can. If it's not possible, then just let us know.
No, I'll try to have it to you at the end of the week before.
And do you have that date?
I'll try and get the materials to you by February 19th. I'll file them the morning of the 19th, if not sooner, with Ms. Sutton, and she can distribute.
Okay, that's great. And then we're going to have a view on February 6th at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And we'll meet at the subject premises.
Correct.
Okay, that fine with you, Mr. Prondak? Because what we'd like to do, obviously, if there were revised.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I'm all set.
If there are revised plans, we'd want to have you look at them and provide us with your insight and cooperation and.
Sure.
Okay, let me, just for the sake of the record here, it's getting to be 9:34. Let me ask, and I don't know who's out there in terms of people who are participants or who may want to participate. Is there anybody out there who wants to be heard on any of these issues that we've been discussing? Okay, I don't hear anybody and see no hands being raised or horns being tooted. So why don't we do that? We're going to continue this hearing until the 25th of February at 7 o'clock in the evening. And we're going to take a view of the subject property on February 6th, which is a Saturday at 10 a.m. And we'll meet at the subject property. Is there anything else, Mr. Corcoran, you want to address?
No, I appreciate your indulgence and your time.
Okay, well, I thank you for all of your time here. It's been a long and somewhat difficult hearing, but I think we've made a lot of progress, and hopefully all of this will be worth the effort. So if Mr. Brown and Mr. Gray have no further issues, then we'll adjourn for the evening and resume again on February 6th for the view of the property.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks. Have a good. Yes. Bye-bye.
Right.
Good night.